Bremner Bird and Fortune return to fall tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Now we join Krishnan Guru Murthy and Sue Turton for tonight's Channel 4 News and Sport.
Fresh fighting in Venezuela leaves 2 dead, dozens injured, and new fears about the world's oil supplies. Good evening. A gunfight in the Venezuelan capital between supporters and opponents of President Hugo Chavez has seen more bloodshed. With the oil price spiralling, can the world afford for one of its biggest suppliers to be paralysed? Also tonight, the Raëlians claim a second human clone has been born. Are they dangerous, crazy or right? Police investigating the New Year's Day shootings in Birmingham are facing a wall of silence in their search for evidence. And is Thailand, long a haven for petty forgers and crooks, now becoming a key staging post for international terrorist networks?
The sports headlines tonight: pure FA Cup drama as 3rd Division Shrewsbury beat Premiership Everton. But no such histrionics at Old Trafford, even with promotion chasers Portsmouth looking for an upset. Michael Vaughan's century gives the Barmy Army faint hope in the final test. And the freezing weather fails to stop thousands lining up for the Great North Run.
The death of 2 people in clashes between opposition groups and supporters of the Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez in the capital Caracas has done little to calm the oil markets. The price of oil has already soared to a 2-year high as street protests and a month-old general strike continue to paralyse the world's 5th biggest exporter of petroleum. The protesters want to force Chavez into holding a vote on his leadership and to release a dissident general involved in last year's abortive coup. Julian Rush reports.
Both sides had guns. In the confusion, no one knows who fired first. For several hours, demonstrators for and against Venezuela's beleaguered President Hugo Chavez fought on the streets and in a park in the capital, Caracas. Over 70 injured, 2 reported dead. Running battles with bullets, bricks and stones. Police fired tear gas to try to keep the 2 sides apart. These just the latest in a string of protests since the president's opponents called a general strike in early December. A strike that's paralysed the country's oil industry, crippling the economy. A strike that so far failed to dislodge Chavez, who's rejected their demands for early elections. They accuse him of economic mismanagement and failing to keep his election promises to tackle poverty and corruption.
Resistiremos hasta el final, hasta lograr el objetivo de salir de Chavez.
We will resist until the end, until we achieve our objective of Chavez and his regime leaving. No one will take our dignity, democracy, justice and liberty.
La democracia, la justicia, ni la libertad.
I think that the opposition is desperate to achieve something, to get rid of him. It's been more than a month now that they've called a general strike. They tried to take over the oil sector. That seems to have failed. So now they're trying to bring people out onto the streets more and more, and perhaps violently, to remove Chavez, because they know that they can't keep it up much longer, I think.
Elected in 1998, left-wing and popular with oil-rich Venezuela's poor, Hugo Chavez is now clinging to power courtesy of the army. Last year, the military launched a coup. He was briefly held, but then restored to power. The US, which has never liked left-wing governments on its doorstep, denies involvement, even though those behind the coup admit meetings with American officials. Since then, his popularity has plummeted.
He's isolated more and more. His left-wing allies, for example, the people in the Communist Party who supported him, moved out of government as well. So it's not just the right-wing middle class who are against him. He seems to have alienated just about everyone, so that now the majority of 70 or 80% who supported him has shrunk to 25-30%, I think.
So why does what's happening in Venezuela matter? Well, like so much in this world, it's all about oil. Venezuela is the world's 5th largest oil producer. It was Chavez's attempts to reform the corrupt state oil industry that prompted the strike. Since then, the country's oil output is down some 70%, and oil prices worldwide have gone up by around 30%.
Normally, just over 10% of America's oil is from Venezuela. Right now, US oil stocks are at their lowest since 1976. And like filling up in Caracas today, that makes fueling all those planes, tanks and ships for a war on Iraq just that bit more difficult and certainly more expensive.
A second cloned baby has been born. That's the claim of the head of the cloning firm set up by the Raëlian organisation, or cult, depending on your view. It has still provided no evidence of either birth. The group said that the baby girl was born to a lesbian couple who are now in the Netherlands earlier today. However, they admitted that the DNA samples, which would prove whether the first child, born last month, was a genuine clone, had still not been taken. Well, just before we came on air, I spoke to Glenn Carter, the spokesman for the Raëlians in this country, who said evidence would be produced in due course, but that he believes the doctors involved.
I absolutely trust the word of Dr. Basilier. There would be absolutely no reason to make these, huge announcements if it wasn't true. And time will show everyone and show the world that it is absolutely true.
Well, Professor Ian Wilmutt headed the team at the Roslin Institute, which cloned Dolly the sheep. Professor, how easy is it to achieve this? And from that, do you believe the claims as well?
Well, frankly, I don't think we've been given enough information to make a sensible judgment. But in view of the experience of everybody else who's been cloning other mammalian species, I think we should remain extremely sceptical until they provide us with the sort of detailed information and DNA for the tests that has been offered. But I think perhaps most important of all, I think it's essential for people to recognize that even if there are apparently healthy cloned children, it remains irresponsible to think of going on and doing this because of the overwhelming evidence that cloned animals are often abnormal, so that these children may face ill health in later years. So until we can have confidence that the technique isn't similar in humans to all of the other animals that have been studied, I think it would be irresponsible to continue.
What kind of problems have been encountered in other species that might crop up in humans?
Well, an enormous variety, starting with comments that have already been made. I understand that some pregnancies were established but lost. There is a much higher incidence of late pregnancy failure in the experimental animals. What happened to the fetuses that were lost in the humans? Was the pathology done on them so that people could learn as to what had been the cause of death? After birth, the animals have died prematurely. Some animals have failed to have an immune system. They've become obese. A great variety of different abnormalities, and there is no reason to think that humans would be different from any other species.
What about the morality of this? I mean, if you could do it safely, would you do it?
Personally not, no. I think the question that you have to ask is, would we be able to treat somebody who was a genetically identical twin in this recent claim of one of the ladies, would they be able to treat a copy of one of them in the same way that they would treat a child produced normally? I think that you couldn't help regarding it as being an identical twin of the original, and therefore you would have expectations of that child, and that's just not fair. You should want each child as a new individual.
Do you think the law should be changed now to catch up with what may or may not be going on? I mean, should people be prosecuted?
I think that the law here already does make it a criminal offence it would make it a criminal offence to do what's been described. To put a cloned embryo into a woman is illegal in Britain.
But there's nothing to stop you hopping over to Europe or somewhere else, is there?
I would strongly support there have been various international pressures, movements, including from the United Nations, that there should be an international agreement that it would be illegal. I think that would be very helpful. But I think we should draw a distinction between reproductive cloning to produce children and cloning to produce embryos in order to study human genetic diseases like motor neuron disease, in order perhaps one day in the future to produce cells to treat degenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease, diabetes, and
Professor,
so on.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, now for a look at the rest of the day's news. Police say witnesses are still failing to come forward in the investigation into the shootings of Charlene Ellis and Letitia Shakespeare. The post-mortems have been completed. Charlene died of a shotgun wound to the head, Letitia of a shotgun wound to the chest.
There's been no holding back the grief felt over the fatal shootings of Charlene Ellis and Letitia Shakespeare on New Year's Day. But despite clear revulsion at the crime and the offer now of £85,000 in rewards for information, few are coming forward, and those that are doing so anonymously. A lack of information that, according to local figures, is the consequence of fear.
I think of a lot of the young people, the people who would know, are genuinely frightened of retribution, frightened of what might happen if they do tell what's happened and who's done it.
The scene of the shooting remains cordoned off, and armed police are guarding Sophie Ellis and Cheryl Shaw, the two girls injured in the attack. The deaths of Charlene Ellis and Letitia Shakespeare are leading to more and more calls for tougher gun legislation, the latest coming from the Association of Chief Police Officers. But the outrage appears not yet to have translated into solid leads for the police investigation.
Preparations for a war with Iraq are expected to take another significant step forward this coming week. MPs returning from the Christmas and New Year recess will be told next week that 20,000 troops are to be sent to the Gulf. The Ministry of Defence said last night that preparations were being made should troops be required for military action. Police investigating a double murder today named a woman whose body parts were found wrapped in black bags and hidden in rubbish. Elizabeth Selina Valad, originally from Nottingham, was identified as the woman whose legs were found on Monday by a tramp foraging for food. Magistrates have given police a further 36 hours to question Tony Hardy over the discovery of the body parts in wheelie bins and in his council bedsit. A man's been charged after an axe rampage at Waltham Abbey left 2 people injured and the historic building severely damaged. The pulpit, a Victorian frieze and a stained glass window were all smashed in the incident. 47-year-old Martin Miles, who's local and unemployed, will appear in court on Monday, accused of wounding with intent. 10-metre waves and 200-mile-an-hour winds have left at least 3 islands in the Pacific archipelago of the Solomon Islands devastated. But as rescue flights begin to arrive, it seems that the islanders have managed to avoid the worst effects of Cyclone Zoe by running to the hills. They were hit by weather at its most extreme. The 400 islanders of Tikopia saw their homes wiped off the map by winds nearing 200 miles per hour last Sunday. Yet extraordinarily, it now appears they all survived the onslaught of Cyclone Zoe. Tikopia's residents have been found alive and well, having retreated to ancient shelters on higher ground when the storm struck.
Most of the big waves damage down at night, but I suspect it's up to 10 meters, about 10 meters high, above the houses.
So 10-metre high waves swept over all the houses?
That's right. Most of the houses been swept by the 10 meters, the height of the wave.
A helicopter brought some basic supplies to the island, with fruit to replace food ruined by the storm and water to replace their supply contaminated by salt water. But islanders said their homes and crops were completely destroyed and it would take at least 3 years to grow all the food they need. Aid workers with food, medical and water supplies have left the capital of the Solomon Islands, Honiara, and are expected to arrive tomorrow. Now, with news of the 3rd round of the FA Cup and the rest of today's sports, here's Sue.
If there really is such a chasm between the cash-rich Premiership and the Nationwide, then surely the FA Cup will be a walkover for the big clubs and top-flight managers wouldn't be fielding their best players. Well, Sir Alex Ferguson was taking no such chances with promotion chasers Portsmouth in town.
Sir Alex was relishing the prospect of sharing a good bottle of red with old mates Harry Redknapp and Jim Smith, but his team were not about to afford the visitors such hospitality. Just 4 minutes in, Giggs was downed in the box. Linvoy Primus the culprit and Van Nistelrooy eased in the penalty. More scrappy defending set up some target practice for Beckham. United looked to be on a roll. But Portsmouth didn't buckle. Roy Carroll spilled while under fire and Steve Stone made it 2-1. Giving a stony-faced Redknapp something to hang on to at half-time. His team talk had some effect. Svetoslav Todorov was unlucky just 8 yards out, but Nigel Quasi had no excuses. How many strikers get this sort of chance against Manchester United? Hayden Fox had clearly lost the plot, felling Van Nistelrooy in the box, who made him pay with penalty number 2. A late Pompey goal was deemed offside, and when substitute Paul Scholes made it 4-1, Harry and Jim knew it was time to taste that plonk. Let's hope the vintage Sir Alex chose was worth the trip.
Over at St Mary's Stadium, Southampton are playing Tottenham in their 3rd round tie. Southampton went 1-0 up after 13 minutes thanks to the strike from Michael Svensson after a fumble by Spurs keeper Casey Keller. And the latest score there at half-time is still 1-0 up. But the big upset of the day came at Gay Meadow, where 3rd Division Shrewsbury dumped the mighty Everton out of the cup. Both Shrewsbury goals came from Nigel Jemson. The second, a last-gasp attempt, was made in the dying minutes of the match, after the Swedish midfielder Nicholas Alexandersson scored for Everton. Holders Arsenal had no such difficulties against their 3rd Division rivals, Oxford. An early lead from Dennis Bergkamp, followed by an Oxford own goal, put the home side beyond reach. Elsewhere, Blackburn knocked out Aston Villa by 4-1. Cardiff City and Coventry drew, while Chelsea beat Middlesbrough 1-0. Wimbledon had an easy victory over Rotherham United with a hat-trick. Leeds made short work of Scunthorpe, 2-0 the score there. Southampton are still ahead by a goal against Tottenham, and Stoke beat Wigan 3-0. West Ham defeated Nottingham Forest 3-2 and Charlton beat Exeter City 3-1. Gillingham will now face Sheffield Wednesday on Tuesday because of a waterlogged pitch. Ipswich Town beat Morecambe 4-0, while it was a 2-0 win for Leicester over Bristol. In Scotland, there was no Premiership action. Both Arbroath versus St Mirren and Ayr's game against St Johnstone were postponed due to frozen pitches. Now, down under, the Barmy Army are daring to think the unthinkable. Day 3 on the 5th and final Ashes test, and England have come out fighting. Clocking up his 3rd century of the series, that man Michael Vaughan has at last stopped the pommy bashing, at least for one day.
It was Michael Vaughan's 3rd century of the Ashes tour, and the crowd at the Sydney Cricket Ground were delighted. His 113 took his tally for the series to 563 runs, the best aggregate for an English batsman on an Ashes tour for more than 30 years. His efforts gave England its first chance at the series to take control.
Beautifully pulled away, no one back here.
It made Australian captain Steve Waugh's already legendary innings from the second day seem so far away. He failed to add to his overnight score of 102 when he fell to Matthew Hoggard in the 2nd over. A stunning and occasionally unconventional performance by Adam Gilchrist added 133 runs off 121 balls, but it wasn't enough. England bowled the hosts out for 363, giving the home side an innings lead of just 1 run and leaving them looking at their most vulnerable for some time. Michael Vaughan will be back at the crease when England go into the 4th day of the final test on 218 for 2 in their 2nd innings.
To rugby union, and Saracens look to be in control of their Premiership clash after Leicester, at least in the first half. Josh Kronfeld, the try scorer under this unholy mess of bodies, gave them a narrow lead at half-time. But the Tigers pulled right back after the break. First Ollie Smith and then Leon Lloyd ran in tries to end the visitors' resistance. Leicester 23, Saracens 18, the final score. Both rain and freezing weather conditions put paid to all national hunt racing in Britain this afternoon. Haydock Park was finally postponed this morning after 3 inspections. With either waterlogged or frozen courses across the country, only the all-weather tracks at Lingfield and Southwell could cope with the inclement conditions. Unlike the horses, the athletes did get a run today, despite the snow covering the Great North Cross-Country track in Newcastle. The women's race was without its biggest draw, Paula Radcliffe, who was suffering from a virus. Kenya's Edith Masai wasn't complaining, though, taking the lead in the final 2 laps and hanging on to the finish. Kanasia Bekele of Ethiopia won the men's race. There he goes. That's all the sport. Now back to Krish.
Thanks, Sue. After the break, a special report from Thailand on how the holiday paradise is looking just as attractive to terrorists. And in Alaska, how a major British oil firm stands accused of failing to protect the wilderness and soiling its own ethical image.
Who wants to be a millionaire? Flashy flunkies everywhere.
I don't.
Who wants the bother of a country estate?
A country estate is something I'd hate.
Who wants to wallow in champagne?
I don't.
And I don't.
'Cause all I want is you.
New Finish 3-in-1 Total with red stain soakers for extra power to deliver brilliant results. Total power and our ultimate shine.
Let me go!
To your lover?
Heck
no, to Kwik Save. They've got Strongbow cider 4-packs at half price. Rouse Fish Choice in sauce is half price. And 1 liter of Lucasade Original is half price too.
Kwik Save, making a drama out of our prices.
Welcome back. You're watching Channel 4 News. Now just watch the commercials and you'll know that BP prides itself on being one of the world's most environmental oil companies. Yet, once again, the company's performance in Alaska has been called into question. An American judge has ordered BP to provide unrestricted access to its Alaskan operations to verify whether the company is complying with environmental and safety laws. The move comes on top of a federal probation order already in place and coincides with the death of a BP contract worker in Alaska just before Christmas. Our business correspondent, Jonathan Rugman, has this.
The Prudhoe Bay oil field on the Alaskan tundra is the biggest in North America. But what should be BP's pride and joy is today looking far from that. A judge has decided to give Alaskan inspectors unrestricted access to BP's operations after hearing that the company failed to meet environmental standards on detecting leaks. The latest bad news for a company whose reputation above the Arctic Circle has suffered a long line of knocks. 3 years ago, BP paid a criminal fine and was put on a 5-year federal probation after a contractor dumped toxic waste. In June 2001, it admitted to Alaska's fire marshal that it was up to 6 months behind schedule on safety tests and maintenance following staff complaints. In August last year, a BP worker was seriously injured when a well exploded. Over 130 wells had to be shut down for checks. And then just before Christmas, a contractor died when a plug blew out of a water pipe he was working on.
Could business go further and be a force for good?
Countering the image BP spends millions promoting, regulators are still investigating last August's explosion, which also caused an oil spill. The company says it's never violated its federal probation, but its critics say that its whiter-than-white image should not be trusted.
What this shows is that the American authorities don't trust BP and are watching them very carefully. And I think that ties in with our thinking that despite BP's green image, there are a lot of skeletons in its closets that the public don't get to hear about.
But for CEO Lord Brown, this is not just about BP's reputation, but also about its profits. The company's share price hit a 4-year low last year after several downward revisions of its production targets. Technical problems in Alaska were a significant factor. The leading advocate for disaffected BP workers in Alaska last year told city fund managers that the company's cost-cutting culture was beginning to backfire.
I can only speak for myself and the workers who have come to me. Greed, G-R-E-E-D, meet the projections, quarterly projections. Produce oil from wells that shouldn't be producing. You don't send your workers down with lorries here in Britain, down a steep mountain with brakes that don't work. You just don't do that here. But this is an isolated area, Prudhoe Bay, and they're operating like a third world country.
But BP rejects such emotive metaphors. At the last AGM, Lord Brown assured shareholders that safety was the company's first priority, and he said mistakes would be put right. Pressure groups admit BP Alaska has introduced more safety checks, though they say more state inspections are equally important. A spokesman for BP today turned down our request for an interview. He said the company fully supported the decision to impose unrestricted inspections on it in Alaska, and that in fact this had been a BP initiative. But we understand that one leading city institution has decided to expel BP from at least one of its ethical investment funds. A huge embarrassment for Britain's biggest company, and one which prides itself on its green credentials. Jonathan Rugman, Channel 4 News, outside BP headquarters in the city.
Now, to most Britons, Thailand's a popular holiday destination. But for the security forces, it is increasingly being perceived as a centre for international terrorism. It's now alleged that the Bali bombings may have been planned, at least in part, in the Muslim south of Thailand. And it's the very relaxed approach that makes it attractive to travellers, that may also make it a convenient centre for those plotting further strikes against the West. From Thailand, our Asia correspondent Ian Williams reports.
Welcome to Thailand. Few countries are more open to visitors. But security officials say it's not only tourists taking advantage of Thai hospitality. In a private room to one side of passport control at Bangkok airport, officials inspect a suspect Singaporean passport.
You see, it's not same, right? Because this have defect. Okay.
By matching it with one of hundreds of specimen passports, they determine it's a fake. While its owner sits nervously, insisting he's done nothing wrong. Officials are detecting 50 fakes every month, which they accept is probably only a small proportion of those being used. In the wake of September the 11th, major Western embassies, including the British, now have staff deployed full-time at the airport, helping to track fake passports, amid growing fears that easygoing Thailand is being used as a planning and logistical centre for terrorism.
We are trying our best to put up the preventive measures. I think that's the best way. We are not going to let it happen.
But Thailand's been slow to recognise the problem. The army is now stepping up patrols along its southern border with Malaysia after an FBI report claimed the Bali bombers met in this predominantly Muslim area to plan the bombing. After at first denying this, Thailand now concedes that Hambali, Asia's most wanted terror suspect, thought to be Al-Qaeda's point man in the region, did pass through. And diplomats have other fears. Bangkok has long been a city where almost anything goes. It's a regional centre for the manufacture of fake documents. This group of 37 Indians, en route to Europe in search of work, were picked up while waiting to take delivery of new, fake European passports.
They come to my country to stay for a while and then seeking the fake passport to go to the third country.
Is this a big problem?
Quite a big problem.
We tried to find out for ourselves how easy it is to get a new identity in Bangkok. In the bustling Khao San Road, where backpackers congregate, stalls openly sell a variety of ID cards, though there's no suggestion that Michael Owen is thinking of a career change.
Well, I now have 3 identities to choose from. There's my new international student card. That'll get me a cheap flight. My new press card will get me access to a place or two. I also now work for the United Nations, and I have a brand new UN driving license. Well, it's easy to dismiss all this as just a bit of fun, but when it comes to buying a new identity in Bangkok, this is only the beginning.
And in the alleyways here, lined with bars and travel agents, it's not difficult to find an agent eager to buy your passport.
But usually with British passports, it's okay?
Yeah, British, they buy British and American and Israel.
Yeah. And do you think maybe 6, 7, 8,000?
Yeah, last time he buy about that.
About 8,000.
About 8,000 detail.
That's about £120, tempting for a hard-up traveller who can report it stolen and get a new one from his embassy.
This line, you see, is not connecting.
Right. Yeah. So that's a genuine passport, but with the photos been changed?
Yeah, photo substitution.
Many end up being intercepted by immigration officials. Some are genuine, the photo changed. Others complete fakes of growing sophistication.
If they use a high technology machine, it is very close to the genuine one.
They're getting better, are they?
Yeah.
It's big business. A fake British passport costs around £1,000 from Chinese or Pakistani gangs. Not a lot for well-funded people smugglers or terrorists. Under intense Western pressure, Thailand's stepping up its efforts against those gangs. There is a growing recognition here that the open, easygoing style that's been such a magnet for tourists could also be exploited by those planning acts of terrorism. Ian Williams, Channel 4 News, Bangkok.
Well, onto the weather, and flooding may be beginning to subside, but now the drop in temperatures has presented another problem. After days of torrential rain eased off the southeast, woke up this morning to a blanket of snow in many places. Here's what you can expect from the weather forecast. The latest satellite picture shows well-broken cloud or clear skies across much of the UK and Ireland. Thicker cloud is moving in off the North Sea into eastern regions of England and bringing some wintry showers. So tonight, northern and eastern Britain will see lighter and less frequent wintry showers, while inland and western areas will see clearer skies and a severe frost inland. Tomorrow, most of the UK will see a dry, cold and sunny day, some freezing fog persisting in a few spots, rather more cloud and some light wintry flurries in northeast Scotland and North Sea England. The precipitation forecast shows the sleet and snow affecting northern and eastern parts of Scotland, as well as eastern England moving through from the north, but much of the UK is set to remain dry.
Our main sports headline: Premiership Everton are knocked out of the FA Cup by 3rd Division Shrewsbury. Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Blackburn, Leeds and even West Ham go through.
Our main headline tonight: fresh fighting in Venezuela has left 2 dead and dozens injured as fears grow about the security of oil supplies from the world's 5th largest producer. We're back tomorrow at 7:30. Until then, from Sue and from me, that's Channel 4 News. Have a very good evening.
Goodbye.
Next on 4, Gene Hackman and Shelley Winters star in a real edge-of-your-seat 70s classic film, The Poseidon Adventure, coming up.
From now on, we'll celebrate New Year with dignity. And we'll drink copiously, but only water. Rejuvenation begins. Step 1, use Boots Detox. Step 2, apply Natural Collection Face Mask. Step 3, wallow in Boots Alternatives Bath Soak. Feel like a new woman. Plus, I've created Virtual Health Farm without any scary procedures. Come on then, where is he? Go on.
I'm really sorry for not paying the right amount for my Volkswagen Passat last week. I should have told you you undercharged me, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. Please don't tell the police. We've got a baby.
The sun has set on the British Empire, but it left an indelible mark on every continent.
Britain was the world's superpower for more than 2 centuries, exerting even more power beyond her borders than the US does today.
Professor Neil Ferguson is one of Britain's leading young historians, and in a major new series, he takes a fresh look at the British Empire.
There's never been a better time to understand how Britain made the modern world.
The story of empire. More than just callous colonialism. Was it the force that pioneered globalization and democracy? Empire. How Britain made the modern world. Thursday at 9 on 4.
Time Team are discovering Saxon secrets in someone's back garden tomorrow at 5:30. Now on 4, you know a disaster's coming, but who's going to survive the Poseidon Adventure?